Greetings, YouTubers. I'm going to attempt to, in short order, answer the question whether Hussein Obama is gutting military spending. There's a lot of misconceptions involved in this. One thing we must remember, there are going to be, unless something is done, automatic cuts to all departments across the board. And they've kind of tied Hussein Obama's hands because the Budget Control Act of 2011 dictates that automatic cuts across the board will occur unless Congress does something. So, one thing people, I think some of you may forget, is Congress holds the purse strings and the executive only has so much power. He can't spend a dime without congressional approval. I've made that point many times. I know I sound like a broken record, but we must remember that. Another thing to go with when we're talking about defense spending, there is a base Pentagon budget, which all the screenshots are rolling by and all the links will be underneath the video as per usual. You can check out exactly what I'm saying for yourself. The funny thing, some of the biggest military buildups ever were done under a Democrat president and a Democrat Congress. For example, LBJ at the height of Vietnam. Adjusting for inflation, the Department of Defense base budget exploded, absolutely exploded. And it wasn't until Nixon and Ford were in office under a Democrat Congress again that started to go down. And of course, Vietnam did end, and those costs went down. But a lot of you progressive lefties in the Democrat Party who are acting as if Bush has initiated the greatest military buildup of all time and defense spending is at historical highs. If you look at it via inflation, some of that, LBJ is very close. And another funny thing, if you look at the Pentagon base budget, adjusted for inflation, in fiscal year 2011, which was Hussein Obama's second full fiscal year, again, he took office as fiscal year 2009 was already in motion, so essentially that was Bush's. In fiscal year 2011, adjusting for inflation, the Pentagon base budget was larger than it was in Reagan's last fiscal year, 1989. You find that surprising? So those people who are out there saying, Obama's gutting the defense budget, not really. Another part of that is overseas contingency operations. A lot of people are upset these cuts. Some people are arguing that you can't really count OCO, overseas contingency operations, as part of defense spending because these cuts are going to hurt the Pentagon base budget too. Well, we don't really have any constitutional authority unless Congress declares war to have troops in all these countries. That comes from the global policeman philosophy. Now, if we're going to send troops to a country, Congress has to declare war, and that doesn't happen all too often. As I've said before, Vietnam, Korea, Clinton's endeavors were not authorized by Congress, but they went ahead and did it anyway, and Congress didn't do anything about it. So these overseas contingency operations are largely a waste of money and unconstitutional. Now, just OCO spending, fiscal year 2007 was $169 billion. Fiscal year 2009, Hussein's first. Hussein and Bush shared that. It was $145.7 billion. Fiscal year 2010, $162.2 billion. Fiscal year 2011, $159.4 billion. So it's scheduled now. We're going to see, at least it's scheduled, a severe cut in overseas contingency operation spending, although I kind of find that hard to believe considering Hussein wants to start a Cold War with China and wants the U.S. to be an Asian nation, as he said. So I'm skeptical that we're actually going to see those severe cuts in OCO spending. The Pentagon base budget could be froze and for an extensive period of time, and I don't think we would sacrifice security. I don't think... I think all these endeavors we've engaged in all over the world they've been largely counterproductive. So maybe, I'm not arguing for the elimination of the Department of Defense, but if the Pentagon base budget was frozen for the next 5 years, what's the problem? And all these overseas contingency operations, all that spending eliminated, I don't see how that would be a bad thing. That would save us a lot of money, and that's not the only thing. I'm just focusing on defense just for this video, so don't bring up other things. So a lot of misinformation going on there. So we'll have to see what happens. But as far as we've gone in Hussein's presidency right now, we haven't seen drastic cuts. So I'm not quite sure. I'm not sure he knows what he's doing here, because we're getting involved in all these other nations. You got Libya. There's a lot of saber rattling going on concerning Syria. What are we going to do? What's he going to do about Iran? So there's a lot. We'll know more in a couple years. I'm not sure if this is actually going to happen, but as I said, looking at the figures, the base Pentagon budget has not seen severe cuts. Quite the contrary since Hussein came into office, and we have not seen severe cuts in overseas contingency operation spending. So please spare me your hand-wringing concerning these phantom cuts. If we did pull our troops out of all these other countries and defended only this nation and impeached anybody who committed U.S. troops to a country and did it without congressional approval, then we'd be on our way. But we aren't holding people accountable. So we'll see what happens. But again, look at the figures, see the links under the video. There aren't drastic cuts at this time. So cancel the apocalypse.